In this video, I'll be going over how to use advanced scroll cinema features in order to create an introductory splash sequence. And so the problem we're trying to solve is if you're trying to give your piece that professional polish, you may want to fade some images in and out in the beginning, including, for example, a logo, perhaps direct users to activate sound, and even have a title page. And we can accomplish this sort of cinematic introduction by using autorun markers as well as manual reels and a couple of other techniques. So without further ado, let's dive in. So the first thing you want to do is come over to your project tab and click the reels button and click manual. So manual reels, in contrast to scroll and time reels, which advance based on user input or the system clock, manual reels will only advance if you tell them to. And I'll show you how we can configure that using autorun and buttons in just a bit. But just know that this evaluation method is a little bit different from the other two. And we can go over here to the timeline window, or timeline tab rather, and select that sequence. Let's actually give it a name as well. Let's call it Splash. All right, and let us begin now placing the first the frames of our splash sequence. So here I'm going to place this image, and I'm going to make it a little bit larger. Let's actually set it to 1.5, which will make it cover the whole canvas. And we can delete this text node that we no longer need. And one technique that we can use to create this splash sequence is we want to fade these images in and out, right? And what we can actually do is, rather than fading the images in and out, is we can put a cover on top of it and fade that in and out. So I just use the shape tool to create a rectangle and set it to 1080 by 1920 to cover the whole canvas. And what we're going to do is have this fade out and have the different images underneath it and activate and deactivate those images as we move through. So I'd actually like to move this rectangle up to the top of the hierarchy just so I can be clear structurally that is the item that's covering everything else up. You'll notice though that the woman then appears in front. So to modify that, we can just set the z-index on the cover to 10. And let's actually go ahead and call it cover as well, so we can have that clear. And up to this point, you've probably animated using primarily keyframes and probably haven't looked at clips much yet. And this is actually a good instance in which using clips makes a lot of sense. So we'll go ahead and do that now. We're going to create a clip track to control the opacity. In contrast to keyframe tracks, when you create a clip track, the input here will actually get grayed out. And that's a signal that we should use a different workflow in order to animate these properties. In particular, we come down to the timeline inspector to click the add clip button. And you'll see that we have these initial and target values here. So this is how we control the animation when we're using clips. And we can set the target to 0, which will fade the cover out and then show the image that exists underneath. Let's pull that to half a second, and then you can see that there we are with the very beginning of our splash sequence. We'd like to leave this image on the screen for about a second before we fade out again. So let's go here, and we're going to add another clip. We can pull that down to 2. And we're going to set then the target to 1, which means that we're fading the cover back in. And another important aspect is we want this to play on its own, right? As if it were a video. And to accomplish that, we're going to start adding some autorun markers. If you haven't taken a look at the autorun tutorial, I recommend going and giving that a look. so you can be aware of all the caveats and what have you. With that being said, we can just hit the auto run start button to configure that. And we can actually preview it right here if we press this button. That is how it will look. And if we save the draft and then take a look at the sequence, you'll actually notice that nothing is happening yet. And that's because we need to change our reel to activate on, or rather play when the app opens. So here, if we click on the reel, we'll see a few different options for its initialization type. So by default, all reels are configured with this activate on start. What that means is that the reel, when the app first opens, will evaluate its first frame, or the first frame will get evaluated. So this will serves as a way to reset the state of the scrollie when everything opens up. And there are reasons why you would want to have that as activate on start versus none and what have you, which I'll go into detail on in a separate tutorial. But for this one, activate on start isn't enough because we don't just want to evaluate the first frame, we actually want it to play. So with that in mind, we can switch it to play on start. And what this does is that for any scroll or manual reels, it will evaluate the first frame and then activate any auto run sequences that might be configured. So if we go ahead and save the draft and then refresh the page, we'll now see the auto run sequence behaving as it should. Okay, so we've gone ahead and placed the first frame. We're going to wait for half a second before fading in with the next frame of the splash sequence. So let's go ahead and add a clip now. We can set that to 0. And on this frame, we will want to show the logo. So I'm going to drag that in. And you'll notice that the logo is very much on top of the image of our character here. And so in order to get them to play nicely, we can use the enabled property to actually disable the image of the woman and keep the image of the logo intact, or rather turn the logo on. So what we can do here is we'll select both of these images, and we're going to go ahead and create a track to handle the enabled property. And for the woman, we're going to make sure that's enabled at the very beginning. But for the logo, we're going to make sure that that's disabled. Right? And so now, in this part of the sequence, we'll see that the woman is there, and then fades out. And then at this point, when the cover is completely faded out, we'll do the switcheroo, and we will deactivate the woman and activate the logo. And you can see in the hierarchy here how one deactivates and activates, the other activates as we scroll through. Okay, and here the cover is fading out, and we'll see that you can't actually see the logo right now, and that's because the logo is white against a default white background. So in order to fix that, what we can do is introduce a background. And I'm going to go ahead and create another rectangle now. We're going to call this background. And we'll set the dimensions to 1080 by 1920. Okay, and we're going to make sure that the logo is on top. Let's actually go ahead and place both of these into a group so we can be a little bit more organized. We'll call this a logo group. And if we move the background behind the logo here in the hierarchy, it'll show up like so. You can also adjust the Z index like we did with the cover if you'd like, but this is another option. Okay, And so with that in mind then, we will have the first two frames. So the logo group is actually on top of the woman right now with the background. So what we can actually do is, instead of having the enabled property apply to the logo, we can delete that track and apply it to the group instead. So let's just do our little revision and then activate the logo here. And a lot of working with Scroll Cinema is as you go through realizing, okay, it makes more sense to do this in a certain kind of way. So I just thought I'd show that. Once you realize, oh, I need the background, you can go in and add that and delete the track that you originally had for the logo and add it for the group. And there we have the beginning of the sequence. Okay, let's leave the logo on the screen for half second, and then we will fade, actually for a full second. So we're at 3, let's go to 4, and we're going to fade the cover in again. So let's add the clip, set it to 1. This should only take half a second. Let's wait another half second. And something else you can do is you can actually copy and paste keyframes, or rather clips. So I'm going to hit Command C or Control C if you're on Windows, and just copy this first clip and just paste it using Command V or Control V. And we'll see that the clip got pasted over here. We're going to want to disable the group again, so we can make room for our title page. And I'm going to create a new group, call it title. And then I'm going to drag in the elements for that title page, including the title. Whoop, missed it. As well as the introductory image. Here it is. Okay, let's go ahead and place these. Okay, and something else we'll want to do is we'll actually want to have a button here to activate the rest of the story once we're on our title page. We should also make sure to disable this title page when we're not using it. So let's add an enabled track for that one as well. We will disable it at the very beginning. And then once we get to this point, we will enable it so that it's ready to be shown when the cover fades out. Okay, let's go ahead and save. See how we're doing. Refresh. Okay, there we have our character, we have the logo, and now we are on our title page. So far so good. Now let's go ahead and create a button that will allow us to initiate the actual story. So I'm going to go ahead and create another empty group. We're going to call this button. And we're going to create an image underneath that button, where we're going to find the image for the light button here. And we're going to select that. Then move it down to here. And the reason we created a whole group for this is because I'd also like to put some text there. Some text that says start. Okay, we can make that a little bit bigger. And here I will go over how to use some of the logic features to configure a button. So here you'll see we have on click and on pointer down and on pointer up. we're actually going to use the on pointer down and on pointer up events. So the idea here is that on pointer down, we're going to give some visual feedback to let folks know that the button is being pressed. So we're going to select your action, and we're going to select node action, and what we're going to want to do is select the button image and change that to a different image. Let's actually go ahead and name the background. So we'll do the button image. So we'll do button image, we'll call it. And we'll call this group start button, just so we can be clear. And under this node action, we're now going to look for button image. You can type to search here, and there's the image we're looking for. We'll select button image, and we're going to select an operation of set image. And the target image we're going to look for is the darkened button. Okay, so now we have our on pointer down event configured. Now let's do the on pointer up, in which the button image should go back to the original one. So we're going to again search for our button target, or our button image as the target, and we're going to set an operation to set that image to the original, set that node to the original image. And so now what we've configured here, and you can see the summary up here, is on pointer down, we're going to set image for this node. And on pointer up, we're going to set image for this node. Let's go ahead and save draft and see what that looks like. We have the character, we have the splash screen, and then when we press the button, you'll see that we now have that visual feedback going. But we also need to actually trigger the rest of our story, right? So to accomplish that, what we can do is say we're going to fade out right at the fade out as soon as the button is pressed. So what we can do is go here to autorun and create an autorun pause. And then we're going to add another clip to fade out. And you'll notice that when we have two clips overlapping, that it will fire a configuration error. So looks like we were just off there. So if we move both of them right to the 5.5 second mark, then everything works fine. Looks like we're immediately going dark here. That's likely because this clip is misconfigured, and yes it is. It's initial should be 0 because we're animating the cover right now. So we're going from 1 to 0, and then we're going to fade out again. Okay, so let's take this to 6. And so you'll remember that we have a auto run. We have this manual reel rather playing on start. So it will play through all of this. And then once it reaches this auto run pause moment, it's going to stop. And the only way that it will finish evaluating is if we tell it to go. So with our button then on pointer up, which is the click events, like we have the on click event here as well. We're using on pointer down, on pointer up, so we can get this visual feedback with the pressing, right? But on click events generally fire on pointer up, and so that's what we'll do as well. As on pointer up, we're going to set a real action, so we'll select that there. Let's look for the splash, and we're going to tell it to play when that button is pressed. All right, and so we can go ahead and reload our scrollie. And you'll see that that works. Okay, so that is the general idea of how you can go about configuring splash sequences. In another video, I'll go into detail on how you can string together a splash sequence with a scroll sequence in order to begin orchestrating these cinematic experiences. So thanks so much for tuning in, and see you in the next one.